Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 403 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about the cost of groceries, the cost of food, the cost of things in your life right now, and exactly how you can go about slashing your grocery bill, because I know that prices are rising rapidly and that things are costing more. I'm seeing it in my own trips to the grocery store and eating out and all these types of things. So I think this is going to be a good discussion, something that's going to be really useful for a lot of you. And this isn't going to be anything groundbreaking, but it's going to help you guys to get back to the basics of understanding, hey, if I want to, make sure that I can control the costs of whatever it may be in my financial life, that I have to do some planning. I have to understand how to find the best deals, and I have to be very intentional about that in my financial life. So stick around for a discussion of all that and more in today's episode. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. Then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you haven't noticed, your grocery bill's been going up, okay? If you haven't noticed, the cost of things that you buy at the grocery store has been rising. Okay, you just look at the most recent consumer price index readings, which the consumer price index, or CPI, is what we use to gauge inflation in the United States in many cases, right? So if you just look, the unadjusted 12 months ended January 2022, all items up 7.5%. So the inflation rate, the rate of inflation is going to be 7.5%. So the prices of goods and services over the past year have increased 7.5%, okay, which is quite a bit, right? Now, if you just look at food, food has increased by 7%, right, over the past 12 months, right? And if you look and you say, okay, well, what would you expect as far as what goes up more in price? Everybody always says, right, eating at home is cheaper than eating out. Well, in this particular case, eating at home has become more costly than eating out has become, right? So eating at home has increased by 7.4% over the past year, and eating away from home has increased by only 6.4. I say only 6.4. Both are huge rises in those costs. Now, the CPI takes into account a lot more things, not just food, right? It takes into account energy, right? Energy's increased by 27%. Over the past year. It takes into account a bunch of commodities, less food and energy, right, which have increased by 11.7% over the past year. It takes into account used cars and trucks and new vehicles, right, which used cars and trucks have increased by over 40% in price over the past year, right? So all these things have been quite substantial increases in price. Now, we want to focus on food, right? We want to focus on the price of your groceries, your grocery bill. And if you're not somebody who eats at home, you absolutely should be. I know I said the price of eating at home has increased more than the price of eating out, but both have increased substantially. And eating at home is still more cost effective than eating out is, very, very clearly, right? Because just think about it. If you're going to eat at home, what are you doing? You're buying the inputs. You're buying the food itself, and then you're just cooking it. Okay, yeah, it's not that crazy, right? But if you're going out to eat, not only are you buying the food, you're buying the labor that goes along with the food. You're paying for your waitress. You're paying for the cooks in the back. You're paying for everything that goes on. You're paying for the rent of the place that you're eating in, right? You're paying for all these things as the consumer, right? So the cost is naturally going to be higher. So we need to eat at home, right? But eating at home is still more costly than it was. So The change in U.S. food prices from January 2021 to January 2022 has been quite significant. Okay, so meats have increased by 13.6% over the past year. Eggs up 13.1%. Now, let's be clear. It's not like eggs were super expensive in the first place, but a 13.1% change is significant. Now, with meats, obviously meats are one of the more expensive things that anybody buys at a grocery store, and that being up 13.6% is huge, right? Fats and oils up 10.7%. Fish and seafood up 9.6%. All grocery items, if you just take a full view, up 7.4%. Bakery products up 7.2%. Cereals and cereal products up 6%. Fruits and vegetables 5.6%. Sugars and sweets 5.4%. Non-alcoholic beverages 4.6%. Dairy products 3.1%. And alcoholic beverages 2.7%. Very rarely can you say that alcoholic beverages have been, the least expensive as far as increase in price over the course of a year, because alcoholic beverages tend to have these huge markups and can just based on the nature of the product. So your grocery bill's been going up. Whether you're noticing it or not, it is going up. And that's because these food prices are rising very, very steeply. The cost of bacon has swelled by 18% and peanut butter 15% over the past year, right? Things that we all love, bacon and peanut butter. Now, it's unclear when this uptick will relent, right? Now, of course, if you guys know anything about inflation in general, right? Just because we say that inflation is temporary, right? That doesn't mean that prices will come down, okay? That just means that the rate of increase will slow, okay? So I think that's a very, very important distinction for us to make, is that it's not likely that these costs will all come back down to earth. Some of them may, come back down, take a little air out, right? May, relent a bit, okay? But it's not likely that these costs will go back to their old ways, right? It's likely that they have come to new values. And the reason that that's the case is because we see that wages around the U.S. are also increasing, right? So as wages increase, it's going to continue pushing with prices as well. And it's this whole idea of, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is the cost of everything pushing up wages, or is the higher wage pushing up the cost of things? And I think in general in the U.S. it would be that the cost of things is pushing up wages. But now that wages are being pushed up, it's not likely that these prices are going to come back down in a substantial way to what they were previously. So it's important to note that things have changed. But the question then becomes, okay, let's say I'm somebody making a fixed income, right? I'm somebody who's making the same amount of income that I was in 2019 pre-pandemic, okay? And now I'm looking up and my grocery bill is far more expensive than it was in 2019. What do I do, right? What can I do to be able to go to the grocery store and do so comfortably and not have to worry about the cost of things that I'm purchasing, and not have to worry about not being able to do other things in my financial life simply because of a rising grocery bill, right? So I have some tips for you, some things that you can absolutely do that will be beneficial, that will help you in your ability to slash your grocery bill, because ultimately that's what we want to do. Lower costs are going to allow us to keep more discretionary income in our pockets. More discretionary income we have, the more fun we can have with our money, the more we can invest, the more we can spend, the more we can give, the more we can do our 3 uses of money. So the first thing that I would say that you should do is to fill your pantry with the basics, okay? Your kitchen should be stocked with certain essential foods, including eggs, pasta, rice, bread, canned tomatoes, frozen vegetables and fruit, onions and potatoes. All of these things, or most of these things at least, are things that aren't going to go bad extremely quickly. Yes, fruits and vegetables can go bad quickly, but frozen fruits and vegetables can stay in your freezer for some time, right? Of course, pasta and rice can stick around in your pantry for quite a long time. Anything that's canned, even though it may have some expiration date, can stay in your pantry for a while as well. So having those types of things stocked up and having those types of things in your pantry can be very useful. Many meals can be made with these ingredients alone, as they serve as the foundation for countless more, meaning that you won't have to buy as many new items each week, which is important, right? Because if you already have some of these baseline things, you're not constantly having to buy these staple type items as the prices continue to rise, right? It's basically saying, go ahead and get the things now because you know they're going to increase in price over time anyway. And so this is a valid argument. It's something that can allow you to have maybe even a smaller grocery bill over time because you're just not going to need to buy some of those other things. Now, it's not to say that you didn't have to buy them. Of course, you do, but maybe you spread it out a bit, right? Maybe you, when you have a week that you think you're going to spend a little less at the grocery store, that you know you're going to spend a little less at the grocery store because you should be doing that type of planning, right? If you know you're going to spend less at the grocery store, then go ahead and pick up more of those types of items and get you kind of to your average grocery price. And then, the following weeks when you're going to, make meals with some of those items, then you don't have to purchase them, right? And when you don't have to purchase them, then obviously that will decrease your grocery bill. So I think that's a very, valuable idea. And I know, and I think many of you do as well. There's so many people who, you go to their house and they'll have like containers of, just pasta noodles, right? Obviously uncooked pasta noodles, right? But you can break out those pasta noodles at any time, right? Or, containers of rice. You can break out that rice at any time. Or any number of canned things that may be in your pantry. Now, that can get a bit out of hand as well, because I don't know about you guys as kids, but I know there were several times as kids that me and my brother and my mom would sit and we would go through some of the canned things to see what needed to be thrown out because it's just been in there for so long and we hadn't used it, right? Just because she would buy all these staple things as canned goods, and then we just might not get around to using them, right? So have a plan to use these things that you do purchase, right? Don't purchase them just to purchase them, right? We're purchasing them so that we can get lower prices now, and that so we can have, certain staple goods in our pantry in case, we just want to make simple things, and we want to make sure that we have food on the table that's not overly expensive, right? So that's the first thing. I think it's a valuable thing to do. Now, the second thing that can help you to decrease your grocery bill, I think, is probably the most valuable. Okay, and it's not hard, but it's going to take some of your time. And I thank God every day that my wife takes the time to do this. Right, I don't have to do this in our family, and I'm glad that I don't. This is not my role, but my wife does this, and I'm thankful for it. And that is prepare before you buy. So don't show up to the supermarket or don't show up to Walmart or Kroger or H-E-B or, wherever, King Soopers or wherever in your part of the country, whatever supermarket it is, without a grocery list and some ideas of what you'll be cooking for the week, right? You need to know these things, because if you don't know what you're going to be cooking, you don't know what you need, then your stomach is really going to guide how much money you spend at the grocery store and what things you buy and what things you don't. And not only that, it's going to increase your likelihood that you're going to walk through the supermarket and forget things that you may ultimately need. And so you're going to go back, and good luck going back and just buying that one thing that you needed and not buying extra things that are going to ultimately cost you more money, right? Meal planning definitely reduces costs, right? If you stick to it, you don't waste food that you bought without a plan. Now, meal planning comes with this connotation, this negative connotation, that you're doing what my brother does, right? That you're doing, chicken breasts and rice and broccoli, and you're putting them in these containers, and that's meal planning, right? That's not what I'm talking about here, right? What I'm talking about is that you know what you're going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner generally over the course of a week, right? You understand what you're going to have, especially dinners, right? Because dinners are going to be the most consequential in most cases. Know what you're going to have for dinner every night, right? Have that mapped out. And then if you have that mapped out, then you can just buy the ingredients and the things that are going to be useful for those dinners, and not go and buy a bunch of extra things or not forget things and have to go back later on. Now, while you map out your dishes for the week, try to think of recipes that are easily repurposed, right? For example, a pot of chili can later be used to fill burritos or as a nacho topping, right? And this is a useful thought, right? Make something that maybe you can reuse, or maybe you can have leftovers of, right? How many times have you guys had, a big, pot of spaghetti or something, and that pot of spaghetti ends up lasting, 2, 3, 4 days because it was a huge pot of spaghetti. Yeah, and those types of things can be useful and can keep your costs down quite a bit. Now, you can decide that eating certain foods on repeat is sad or monotonous or like so much else with life. You can choose to look at it more positively, right? Having the same breakfast every day for a week can be really comforting and simplify both wallet size and can simplify things both wallet-wise and decision-making wise, right? Then you can do something else next week if you, feel bored with what you're doing this week, right? Food is not something, and too often do we make food something that's just this magical, fantastic thing. And don't get me wrong, I love to eat, right? I'm not a small individual by any stretch of the imagination. I like to eat, I like food, but at the same time, people get so caught up in, we need to have variety, we need to have all these different things and do all these different things with food. Ultimately, eat things that you're liking to eat, right? Obviously, eat things that are good for you and that are going to be nutritionally valuable. But ultimately, I'm not saying that we need to be, eating things that are bad or eating things that we don't like. Eat things that you like, but don't, in the search of variety and the search for being unique in the kitchen. Don't go and spend a ton of money at the grocery store just for that fact, right? You can do simple things that may be a bit more monotonous, but can really put an ease on your pocketbook relative to other things that you could be eating. Now, your grocery list probably won't even prevent your impulse buys, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't use one, right? If you walk by things, you may still pick them up. Now, I'll say this. I'll say when I have a grocery list, for me, I'm a very, logic-based person, right? If I have a grocery list, I'm going to buy what's on this grocery list, right? And only if I think of something specific that is related to something on the grocery list, may I go pick something else up or whatever, right? But the likelihood is I'm just going to buy what's on the grocery list and go home. And then if I need something else later, I might have to go back. But ultimately, buy what's on the list, and that will keep you to the budget bounds that you've set and the food bounds that you've set for yourself for that week. Now, even if you stick to the list somewhat, that's fantastic, right? There's no need to worry about perfection, right? As a treat, you can purposefully plan to buy 1 or 2 things that are off your list, and that can keep you being rewarded for what you're doing while still doing the right thing, while still being effective in preparing for what you're going to buy at the grocery store. And I think this is the biggest thing. I think it is the most valuable thing, and it's obvious. It's an obvious thing that's going to save you money. It's an obvious thing that's going to save you time at the grocery store, right? It's going to save you from some impulse buys, quite clearly, right? But it's something that people don't want to put the time into doing. They'd rather just go and look and walk slowly and figure out, okay, what might we want? What might this or that? And end up spending way too much at the grocery store and letting their stomach walk them down the aisle instead of, pushing the cart where you need it to go based on the food that you need to get, right? So prepare before you buy at the grocery store. That will help you to cut down on your grocery bill. Then the third thing that you should be doing is you should track down the best deals, right? You can usually browse discounts on a supermarket's website or app or find them listed at the retailer, right? So take a look at your grocery list before you decide where to do your buying. Now, I would suggest that this is a good idea, right? Make the list and then figure out where you might go buy your food. Don't let one store's deals or discounts drive what you buy that week. But obviously, if their deals or discounts are on things that you can actually use, then by all means take advantage of them, right? So if you're doing a produce heavy trip, you might look for a store with frequent produce sales, right? If you're stocking up on shelf-stable goods, then choose a store that has the best value for those, even if other items like produce cost more. Because let's be clear, most grocery stores you may go to, there may be several within a mile radius, right? And as much as we hate or I know I do, going to multiple places. If you're really looking to cut down on your bill, then you may best be able to do so by going to multiple places, by planning that out, by looking for the best deals, going to those places, getting the deals, and then going to the other places and getting the other deals that may be available to you, right? I think that can be very, very valuable, even though it may be a little more hassle. And again, it all comes down to how much are we really trying to slash our grocery bill, right? If you're somebody like myself who's pretty comfortable with the range in which my grocery bill falls, even with the increase in prices, I'm not going to go to a bunch of different places to buy groceries, right? But if you're somebody who your grocery bill is, a big expense for you and something that's quite substantial that, is getting out of control, then by all means, take some substantial measures to get yourself back to zero on your grocery budget. Now, you may pick up many non-perishable items, including mayonnaise, ketchup, mustard, hot sauce, dried pasta, beans, tortilla chips, and all those types of things at even a local dollar store, right? That may be valuable to you as well. Now, some of you may be saying, oh, why in the world would I buy something from a dollar store? I'm just going to tell you, you're going to be surprised. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised at how little difference there is between what you can get at your local dollar store and what you can get at your local supermarket. So just something to think about there. Now, around St. Patrick's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, you can find steep discounts on items like corned beef, carrots, cabbage, turkey, duck, roast, ham, box stuffing, hamburgers, hot dogs, many of which can be stored in the freezer for long periods of time. Again, anything that we can freeze or anything that is non-perishable can be extremely valuable to buy at a discount because eventually you can use that thing and then not have to spend the money on it later on. Meanwhile, generic and store brands tend to be the cheaper varieties. Buying more canned and frozen vegetables when many aren't in season is another evergreen choice, right? But I would just back up just a second. Of course, the store brand is a big thing as well, right? Don't be afraid to get those store brands, right? There's very, very little difference. Yes, me and my wife have been looking lately just because of stuff that we may want to give our son and looking at certain brands versus the store brand and how much sugar stuff has in it because, he's a little guy. He doesn't need a bunch of sugar or anything. And so you may find some nutritional differences, some slight differences in makeup, but overall, some of those store brands are going to be just as valuable to you and your grocery bill as would be any discount that you may go about getting. So I would definitely suggest tracking down the best deals, especially if it is vital for you to get your grocery bill down. And then the final suggestion I have for you as far as slashing your grocery bill, paying less at the grocery store, is to tweak your menu. And that's suggesting that you have a menu at all. First of all, have a menu, right? Know what you're going to eat. This is going back to the second suggestion I had for you, right? Know what you're going to eat, but then tweak that menu. Now, how should we tweak it? Well, meat and dairy tend to be the more expensive items at the supermarket, right? That's just clear, especially as of late and the increases in prices, meat and dairy are just going to be super costly. Now, in response, aim to make more meals that don't rely on them as the central ingredient. I'll give you guys an example. There have been multiple times when my wife and I have taken a month or whatever and just done vegetarian or vegan or, mostly vegetarian. Vegan's tough for me, but mostly vegetarian. Or we've gone low carb or whatever for a month. And guess what that's going to do? It's going to decrease your grocery bill because you're going to not buy a lot of stuff that you would have otherwise. Now, you can get into this habit of trying to buy a bunch of other things to supplement, and that can be tough, right? But if you, let's say, went vegetarian for a month, then yeah, you're probably going to pay a lot less at the grocery store because even with the excess of the produce that you may purchase, the meat and dairy that you may leave behind is going to be far more costly. And so you're going to have a lower grocery bill, right? So tweak your menu to kind of push away from some of the more costly items that you may buy. So using meat sparingly as flavor, like adding a bit of bacon to a mushroom risotto, is more economical, says this chef that was interviewed for this CNBC article. Now, consuming less meat also helps you to lower your environmental footprint. Not that that should make a big difference in what you ultimately are getting at the grocery store, but maybe the case as well. So buying foods with longer shelf life can cut your trips to the supermarket altogether. So cabbage, carrots, Brussels sprouts, and beets can last for 2 weeks or longer when stored in a crisper drawer. All right, delaying your return is always good for your wallet. Every time you walk into the store, that's an opportunity for impulse purchases to drive up your bill, right? So you really need to know what you're going to buy, what you're going to use, what you're going to buy for, right? And then you'll be able to make some of the best decisions that you can at the grocery store. Look, it's rare that I focus on a bunch of things like this. I know I talk a lot about investing. I talk a lot about getting your financial foundation built. I talk about a lot of things like that, right? But ultimately, your financial life really comes down to your budget, right? It really comes down to the money that you spend on day-to-day things, okay? And one of the biggest things that we spend money on is food. We all need it. We all have to buy it in some way, shape, or form, right? And with the prices increasing, it's just, valuable to us all to understand what we can do to combat some of these rising prices. Now, of course, are we going to be able to beat, increases in price over a long period of time? No, right? Over a long period of time, if prices are going to rise, they're just going to rise, and we're just going to have to, figure it out, right? But one way that we can go about figuring it out is by implementing good habits when it comes to buying groceries, by implementing good habits when it comes to shopping in general, because some of these things that I'm telling you are not just valuable for going to the grocery store, right? Heck, think about, just preparing before you buy. That can be valuable for anything that you buy, right? Of course, anything that you buy, doing your research beforehand, knowing how much stuff is going to cost week by week, finding discounts, finding sales. All that stuff can be valuable regardless of what you're going to purchase. But of course, with the grocery store, that's just something that comes up every single week, and you can make a very big impact on your life and on your budget by just being very intentional. Is it going to take more time? Yes. Are you going to want to spend that more time? Maybe not, right? But I promise you, if you do, there are going to be tangible, there's going to be tangible returns to it, right? There's going to be tangible increases in your residual income. You'll see tangible decreases in your grocery bill, and hopefully, some of these costs subside, or at least the increase in some of these costs subside over time, and get us back to some semblance of normalcy at the grocery store. But nonetheless, I just want you to be prepared. I want you to know how to go about buying things that you would buy every single week, but doing so in a financially responsible manner that you would be proud of as you move forward. So hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully this helps you to be a better steward of your finances. Hopefully this helps you to be a better consumer and somebody who doesn't have to spend as much every time that they go to the store. So thanks for watching this video. If you could, go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. Then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in tomorrow as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.